Hello, beautiful. Get your coffee. It's time for Coffee with Matilda, a journey to self. Today, I have the honor to interview founder and CEO of Bonding and Belonging. He's a true cosmopolitan. He's a global entrepreneur. He's a neuroanthropologist. He founded different successful companies. He has been in leadership position in hospitality field for so many years. Christian Kurmann, welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing?
Very good. You are joining me from Switzerland.
That's
Yes,
correct. Yes.
very good. Christian, I've seen some of your captivating and uplifting speeches about leadership and
Sure.
entrepreneurships on different social platforms.
Mm.
And I think with the pandemic, the world requires great leaders and entrepreneurs. Therefore, I'm very glad that you accepted the invitation to be on the
Sure.
show now, because we can learn from you a lot. So I have a lot of questions. Let me go straight to them.
I'm all
Tell
yours.
us, tell us how, in your opinion, the leaders around the world handle the corona outbreak.
It's actually a very interesting question, especially with something that is so unexpected. No one really anticipated. And I think it shows a little bit really how we all functioning as human beings, as leaders, as politicians, as neighbors, as citizens. And I would argue there's a huge issue in regards to reality, because reality is not something it comes from thinking. Reality is something that is way beyond that. And I would argue I think we actually have a false perception about reality, because we are so much hammered with knowledge and information, this much that we actually completely absorbed to look after ourselves and those around us. And having said that, I feel we sort of, confuse the relevance between image and prestige and titles and positions, and actually what is really necessary. And you can clearly see with the coronavirus, a lot of people really escaped and really couldn't really deal with this unexpected and unknown situation, rather actually to focus and to be very disciplined and show the dedication. And that's why most countries and most governments and Fortune 500 companies completely failed, I'd say.
So, how about like other leaders, like deans of universities, the CEO of top managements and top companies? What characteristics or ability they need to have, or they need to apply in leadership, so we can come out of this mess like faster?
Is actually, I think the most two important thing is, we as human beings, we are extremely sensitive creatures, and sometimes we're very insecure. So what we need to do, the most important thing is actually to create a safe haven. So people feel safe, secure, and inspired. And there's a certain way of belonging. And with that, also in a very calm way. And the only way you can do that, two most important thing, is really to have empathy and to have this global understanding. Where are we now, and how can we get out of the situation? The quicker, the better. So people feel safe, and that's very, very important. And not necessarily safe in a way that we create tangibles, like things we can hold on. Rather, to feel safe, secure. And
Mhm.
that's very, very important. So it needs a certain conversation with the individual, whether it's citizens or the neighbors, whether it's employees, whether it's your business partners, and to ask them what is it that makes them feel safe, secure. What do they need at the moment that they feel inspired? But inspiration is very important. So we can use that curiosity to be open for very, very different ways how to tackle that current situation, not just to stick to old school models, which frankly didn't really work out. So it's very, very important. So security, safety, inspiration, to be calm, and to belong.
Oh,
These are
nice.
the major criteria.
I love the
Um,
Bilan one.
yeah, yeah. It's very. I think it comes back from anthropology. I think it's sort of a human, the most deepest, most profound inclination of us human beings is really cooperation. So everything what we do around to cooperate, to be close, I think you would be very successful. Yeah, obviously unconditioned.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
it was interesting to see what are the countries that apply that in their own ways,
Hmm.
or what culture or what political environment or social environment did fairly well, and which ones didn't really well.
Do you have any example, for example, the ones that they've done
Well, yeah, I just checked. I mean, I think to my understanding, roughly about 175 countries who had the coronavirus, some of them drastically and some a little bit less. But I think I would say those who applied a political order very straight away, very strict, decisive, who have dedication, who can actually spread the dedication among their own people, and to have a very good information flow and communication. They are the ones who should be shining best. And I think on top comes there was Israel, Germany, South Korea, who did very well, and then you had also Poland. And these are the monks who did exceptionally well. And so I think you could see how fast they actually coming out of the lockdown. And so it needs a certain order. That the order actually gives that safe haven I
Mhm.
was talking about earlier. So if people don't feel safe, and if people have too many freedom in a crisis, you don't get things under control. That's very important.
So I'm going to ask you this. Do you
Sure.
think dictatorship deals with the crisis better than democracies or the opposite?
Well, dictatorship is probably a bit rough, but I think democracy and freedom, the way we enjoy it, particularly in the United States or in Europe, didn't really work. Because if it would,
Mhm.
we wouldn't be where we are now. So simply, it needs a very quick um, direction, and you can only do that with conditioning, unfortunately. There's no other way, because otherwise people have too many alternatives. I mean, people have too many alternatives. There's no common sense to go
Mhm.
in the same right direction. But bear in mind, every day, any country or any economy locks down longer, it costs the company or the country enormous amount of dollars. So it's very, very important to make it very clear to the citizen and employees, this is what you have to stick. And if you don't, we're going to have a huge inflation. We might have a devaluation of our currency, or we might, have to lay off people. So I think
Mhm.
many leaders, and I was very surprised, didn't really understand that, because I think some thought, well, we have enough reserve, we have enough cash to distribute. Some thought, well, we still can wait a little bit, but now we can see the consequences, which I'm sure in many countries will be dire, and particularly in terms of unemployment and debt. And it will take a long time in certain industries to get back where they were, not really before, but at least they could produce and contribute to GDP of that particular country. That's fundamentally important. So you can't really say is something we need. On one hand, you need to have a good sense of gut feeling, but on the other hand, you need to be very, very clear that people actually can follow, and people do follow when they feel safe. They do follow, but in many parts of Europe and around the world, people didn't follow. That's why there was a bit of chaos.
Maybe transparency was missing from their leaders?
I think definitely transparency, as I said earlier, a political order, which means a direction. Why? Why do we need to do it? Because when people understand meaning, they can instantly connect and it makes sense. When things make sense, but things that doesn't make sense, or things that are well informed, why people have to do it, they're hesitant, and because they feel not safe, they feel insecure, they're not inspired to do things that doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
So for example, why can I go out for a walk? Why is this not possible? Even I'm not touchy, I'm not in contact with anyone. So most people didn't quite understand that, and still in some countries they did it, and some they got a heavy fine, and some they got other punishment. So I think you can do that for a short period of time, but I think most governments realized there's a point things get very tricky,
Mm-hmm.
either because at the end of the day, it's survival. Either you have enough money to look after yourself, or you find your own ways, and that's going to be very close to anarchy, and this is very dangerous.
Well, then I'm going to ask you this. What is value in times of current global crisis?
I think it's meaning, because meaning ultimately leads to fulfillment. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not what many people think, it's happiness, because happiness is something we constantly need to feed with joy and desire. So it's a little bit the rat race. So I would rather wish that more people would understand meaning for themselves. What makes meaning that gives them fulfillment? And fulfillment actually makes them, again, makes them feel safe, secure. And it's a huge inspiration. And the same thing you can do for a company, for a product, for a nation, for a culture. Yeah, so that's definitely something I seen was missing.
Mm-hmm. Christian, I know you talked about social crisis before. You talked about if you exclude any group of people in any society, it is no wonder you find yourself in social crisis. Now that I'm watching the news and reading the news, I come to this realization that our biggest enemy is not coronavirus, but the inner demons of humankind, like hatred and greed. If people blame the pandemic on foreigners and minorities, like in China right now, where against African people, some even mention like an inhuman treatment, like Chinese landlords are forcing their African tenants to leave their house. They're evicted from their own house, or students, they have to come out of the dormitory, African students in China, and they cannot go to the hotels because hotel cannot, they're not giving them rooms. Restaurants, they don't accept them. I mean, they're in the street. What is this? What's this? We thought about global solidarity and generosity, and we're seeing exactly what you were talking about, like the social crisis is happening now.
Yeah, I think in all fairness, I have to say, social global exclusiveness is something we've been witnessing for many years, because we have a certain perception that's the way certain things should be, or a certain way
Mhm.
should react or should conform to the greater good. So I think it has a lot to do with insecurity and anxiety, and people worry about whether they lose their jobs, or whether they don't, certain people from outside, because of different ethnic groups or different belief, they might dismantle the overall understanding, or dismantle social stability. And now we're using current situations, which we had many other events over the last 10 years in many parts of the world. One uses events to actually make sure that certain people are not welcome. Well, that is not really the sort of sign of democracy that will go down very well in the long term. And I can't imagine that something will be accepted, even as part of China, or among Chinese population, or global population, because in a way we have all a lot of things in common. We have a lot more common than we think. It's just because many people think, because we have different ethnicities and we follow different beliefs and religion, is a reason to actually segregate. And segregation, unfortunately, is something very widely cultivated by institutions for various reasons.
Wow, interesting. But yeah, I'm thinking about it a lot, and I'm thinking why all of some of the countries, actually most of the countries, they are dealing this crisis with nationalistic isolation and competition. For example, Christian, we have problem with medical resources. It's not enough. Like testing kit, masks, gloves. Every country is fighting over it. Why can't we have a global cooperation, like making your production more efficient? And secondly, to distribute the medical resources fairly and not monopolize with the richest countries. Why we cannot have global solidarity?
Well, I think it's a very, very fair point you bring in. There's many other examples. I think it goes really. We have to go way back. I think the industrialized countries around the world, I feel and I see there's a tremendous amount of anxiety and fear and worry of opening or being completely overawed or losing their position or the economic influence worldwide. So I think the question really is, how can we afford economies, can we afford to run companies who do not cultivate inclusiveness? Can we afford companies or countries who actually cultivate a certain level of segregation? I think this whole va-va-voo with these masks and gloves, I think it's actually unbelievable. Again, what I said earlier, it has a lot to do with the reality. We don't understand the reality. Everybody already thinking we have to open a shop, already running the economy, making the money, paying the debts. But we're still in the middle of a crisis, for Christ's sake. We still have people who have, these viruses left and right, and we haven't really thought. And that's why we need to understand to be better prepared for the unknown and for the unexpected. And that's not with thinking. It works with impulse, with emotions, instincts, with subconscious and conscious. And I think there's a lot of people out there now that are probably shaking their heads and what is this, this kind of esoteric approach. But it's got nothing to do with it, because we have to understand the brain is not something that can make us think. The brain can only operate when we feel safe. And the only reason the brain feels safe when we are between 8 to 12 megahertz, which is an alpha brainwave. I'm sure most have already heard about that. And once you're in the alpha, then you actually have this amazing possibility to have curiosity, to actually look for many different options, how we can tackle a situation. So we need to ask ourselves, how can we reduce the pace without challenging the growth of economy in preschool, in parenting children, at school, at work, in society, in companies, organizations, institutions, at home. Otherwise, we might end up really embracing what many try already, to convincing us that we need to have a chip in our brain so that we can operate and overcome these situations in the future. Because the thing is, we need to understand the pace, the way it is now, and the competition and the complexity of comparison will not reduce, because this is the kind of thing we're holding on and we think that's what we need. But in fact, we don't really need it, because it's a little bit like when you go snorkeling, okay? So if you go in murky waters, you're not going to see anything. And that's a little bit the way I think we currently look at in any situation. And these are the bases where we actually take decisions. And that's something that should really worry us. So I think we need to go back to clarity and have people who have compassion, who are conscious, and who have courage. At the moment, we don't have any leaders or CEOs in Fortune 500 companies who have courage. Not at all. They just do things by the book. That's why we are where we are today. If we would have approached things differently, more exclusive, looking at inequality, looking at exclusively involve people, bond people, get people together, close people, and even as a leader or as an executive, allow and accept that people who have better ideas and better concepts to the solutions, accept them. Then I think I'll be more confident to look in the near future, because what's currently happening is about humanity. So our humanity is at stake. The way we run our companies and the way we run our societies and the way we govern our nations. That's what it's all about. The virus is one thing, but many people don't see the big picture. And that is something I expect from a global leader. And that's what I expect something from a Fortune 500 CEO. So I think there's a bit of gap.
Yeah, there it is. Governments and people need to make very important decisions right now, Christian, in the coming month or two that can change the world completely. I don't think it's only a healthcare crisis, it's a political crisis. Now, governments are handing out billions of dollars and deciding to reshape their job market, education system, and so on. So soon we will have economic crisis, and after that, I'm sure mental health crisis. How do you think we need to navigate ourselves right now?
Naturally. And I mean, just coming back what you said, yeah, it is such a strategy. When we think about it, we're looking at probably, I don't know, 5 to 6 weeks. This planet has been shut down for 5 to 6 weeks. We've been running the system for hundreds of years, and the whole global economy collapses. Isn't that the reason to really question ourselves and doubt about our current system, the way we lead, the way we manage, and the way we do business, and the way we run nations? I think it is it's a very big job, and I think there's no really a recipe. But what I think, um, what I can see that could happen, because the thing is, we as human beings, we have this amazing capacity to survive. And to survive is to adapt. And people know in every country, in every province, in every region what works and what doesn't work. So I think I would rather see that governments open a fund, a development fund, and you can apply. Let's say there's a number of different industries, and you have a panel that has to go very quickly. So people can apply for ideas when you get a fund, and you get monitored and mentored, that you can then open a project and you can hire people, those who are currently losing their job or going to lose a job, because we are going to see a massive unemployment, especially in the industrialized countries, in Europe, in the States, and some other emerging markets. So just to giving money to pay the debts and pay the rent is not gonna go, because no country can afford it. So we need to diversify the risks. And I think this could be a way also to linger the inequality, because we're going to have tremendous amount of inequality. Because if people at the moment who don't have a job, who don't have the money, the ones who have a lot of money, they're in a tremendous advantage. Unfortunately, we do not have enough mindful leaders today who say, you know what, I want to give you an opportunity. Bring me a good idea and I'll help you to actually bring it alive. That's, for me, is the kind of leadership we need today.
Uh, Christian, you talk about inequality a lot in your speeches, also in your writings that you publish. When you look at the world right now, because of the pandemic, the inequality becomes more visible. Like, actually, right now, the main focus of pandemic has been on the developed world, started from East Asia, then Europe, then North America. United States government can spend $2-3 trillion on rescue package, but the scary part is when it spreads on underdeveloped countries in South America, like Brazil, in Africa, or in some Middle East countries that they cannot afford. They don't have a rescue package. What will happen? These people need to eat. These
Yes,
people need to live. That's
yes.
what the
It,
scary time will start.
it is a scary, it's a tragedy, and this is what I earlier said. This is now we can see which leaders can
Mm.
actually inspire the 1% to be solidarity, to actually support, and to give assistance, to give mentorship. I think I lived in many parts of the world in underdeveloped countries, and it's a human instinct to survive and to adapt and to find ways how to adapt. But of course, that requires an enormous amount of energy. And I think we have a lot of people in many parts of the world, in South Africa, in Brazil, in Russia, in India, in Pakistan, in many all these countries where currently crises are really shaky, not as bad as in Europe or in the States, but the consequence is going to be dire because they are really tensely populated. So I think it's very important. I would say to all these people, if you want to have a safe life the next few days, you need to roll up your socks and find out how these people can feel safe and support them. And go out there and, give them food, give them support, give them assistance, and then find a way that they can actually establish a future so they can look after their families and maybe become social entrepreneurs.
Do you think there is a? Do you think we can come up with a global action, or no? We're not
Well,
capable.
I think at the moment, we are especially, and I hate to say that, I think in the industrialized world, we're so rational, we're so driven by technology and science, and we do everything possible that we actually can, we can almost like embrace it. And that's why there's a lot of things we don't see because we are completely hammered and we lack of consciousness, we lack of compassion. And that's, I think this virus clearly shows us that humanity is at stake. I wish to see that we can actually initiate a tremendous movement for humanity so we can see solidarity in entrepreneurship, in people who need help, medical help, in people who need jobs. That like a huge wave of movement where each and everybody can ask themselves, what can I contribute? Because at the end of the day, it's about all of us, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're African or European, whether you're Asian or South American, whether you're Buddhist or whether you're Jewish or Muslim, it's all about us. And that closeness, I have to say, frankly, with my research I've been doing in the past years in Africa, I have experienced in many ways because indigenous people have no other way than actually stick together because otherwise they don't survive. This is something we utterly underestimate. We still look on our own, especially in very industrialized countries. We focus too much on our own. We haven't really understood that acceptance and understanding is the basis of wisdom. And we actually completely immature in leadership. This is leadership now. Now we can see all these theories and all these beautiful models from this Ivy League not working. They're not working at all. Because if they would, we would have already foreseen things. All these forecasts and all the different measurements we have in place, all the science and the technology don't work because no one could see it happen. But the people and nature and animals and indigenous people, they can see it, they can foresee it because they have psychedelic abilities, they have telepathic. I'm not saying now we all of a sudden we have to be all become telepathic. No, but what I'm saying is we are so very much driven by technology and science, which is go way beyond what we actually can indulge. And that's why more and more people think we have to keep going that way so we're not feeling safe. But that's actually the opposite. The more we increase the pace, the more we have comparison, the more we have competition, the more we as human beings, we feel insecure, we're struggling to actually, find our balance and hence taking the right decisions.
Very nice. Very interesting. A lot of people are talking about global solution, a new world order. Do you think it is necessary to have that kind of step?
That's a good question. I think you should probably speak to those who have written books about the new order, the new world order. And I think there's definitely a few gentlemen, which are well known and reputable. And one should ask, why do we need a new world order if it would be for the good, the common and the humanity? I'm the first one, but of all the things I've read and seen, I doubt it's actually for global society and humanity. It's actually rather to protect a few to become more dominant and use more authority and more control. And that's what shaders make think. And that is exactly what we need to stand up and create a movement for humanity. That is not going to happen.
Actually, yeah, this is scary to hear about 5G, the vaccine, and what's going to happen to the money situation. So, uh, if you start reading about those, you stop sleeping the night at
It
night.
is it is only scary if you feel completely helpless. And many people, that's what I'm saying, when you don't have the courage, if you're not conscious and you don't have the clarity, you just follow. And this is exactly what I've been observing in the last couple of years, that many people don't necessarily follow meaning, they rather follow happiness. And happiness requires a constant, you have to basically feed the machine with desire, with joy, with pleasure, you know, and that requires to work more and be more competition and compare more. And you don't need to have to be creative, you don't have to be a creative thinker, you just have to find ways that it suits you, not them or us, it's you. And
Yeah,
that's a kind of an approach in many part of the world, in many cultures I know and I lived, and it's just completely foreign. And we want to, and I see this being globalized, and I think is something very, very much, um, which I think is very worrisome. And that's why all the different tools are in place to make that happen, to actually convince us that all these gadgets and we should have in order to overcome and deal better with the unknown. It's completely nonsense. I think it's nonsense. It's not got nothing to do. It's only got about dominance and control of the human, and because if people are clear and we have very strong intuition and we have a very, very strong instincts, like a dog or a cat or a frog, you'd be amazed. And I think each and everyone who's got a dog knows how strong a dog's instinct really is. The same with a human. The same thing when you take a decision. You know exactly when things are cooking, you can feel it. And that's people want to take away from us. I think this is something we should really worry about. And I can only speak to younger people who are very, want to hop on that wagon with 5G and having all these implanted nano chip in a brain. I think we are creatures for 25,000 years, 100,000 years, and all of a sudden things need to change. Like we're changing a lot of things. We don't realize actually what we're doing. We're interfering in biology. We're interfering in humanity, and no one seems to bother. That's what worries me most.
true.
Mm.
Christian, some think the banking system in Europe is weaker than USA. What do you think of the future of banking, real estate? Do you think this is the end of the cycle? Do you think we need another system, or capitalism is the system to continue?
It's interesting that you asked this question. Capitalism was a system that worked very, very well, but in the mid 80s, when the banking and the finance sector was being deregulated, then when the whole thing started to tumble. And now the is a lot of the banks and Federal Reserve and National Bank, they have too much authority and too much impact on the economy that is going to be very difficult to tweak that. I don't think capitalism is a very bad system. It is bad when we look at inequality. It's very bad when we look at immigration, exclusiveness. When you look at certain crime rate, when you look at sexual harassment, then
Mm.
you can't really say the current system is a good system. Maybe for certain people. We have many situations in many parts of Europe or the United States and Australia, or let's say the industrialized country, where people have a decent job, but I can't make it. So I have a second job. So there's something utterly wrong, you know? And coming back to the banks, yeah, I can certainly see at the end of the day, it's us as citizens, as workers, who are the ones who lose most.
Hmm.
And I think we should stand up for that.
I like that. We should stand up for it. Yeah, how do you think we can deal with fear right now and anxiety? Like lots of people are losing a lot of money. There's a lot of uncertainty. Small businesses are affected the most. What's happening? What can we handle this?
I think many people have their own little recipes. I'm not sure whether it's very efficient or good, but going back to neuroanthropology, when you understand and accept that the brain can only function when the brain is actually calm. So I only can tell people to find ways that they can calm themselves. Because when the brain is calm, you can better overcome fear and worries and anxieties, uncertainties, and it will not help you any other measures you're taking only for a short period. So you'll be constantly dependent on that. But for example, if you, let's say, if you contemplate, if you be in stillness, or if you meditate, or if you're doing breathing exercise, that gives fundamental it gives a fundamental reducing your brain waves, and it helps you to concentrate, and you're going to have a very strong balance, and then you feel you can better overcome the fear. There's no other way. There's really no other way. Because we live in a situation at the moment, there's a lot of uncertainties. We can overcome, there's no doubt, but not with the way we've been taught, not the way we've been doing things, and not the way we probably and currently are being told. So people need to find their own way to keep themselves in good, healthy balance. So they are conscious, they have the courage, maybe to turn around the whole wheel and go in a different direction, and to feel good and inspired, because there's lots of things to do. We might have to do it different. There's lots of options, but it's going to be very different.
I know that you've been with Buddhist and a Buddhist monastery in Bhutan for several months, practicing ancient Tibetan meditation and mindfulness. Can you share a little bit about that? I'm sure that can help us to understand what mindfulness is and how
Yeah,
can we
I well,
keep ourselves calm.
mindfulness is something that's been created a couple of years ago. That is more understanding for the Western world, because we who follow such hasty life and focus very much on competition and comparison, overanalyzing and striving, and we think ambition is an amazing thing, and all of a sudden one has been asked to sit down and meditate. It's a difficult thing to actually resonate. I have spent many months in a mountain monastery in the Himalayas in Bhutan, and I was among the only Westerners with 40 monks, and I've been taught what we call secretive tantric meditations, and they are give the ability for psychic abilities. For example, it goes into telepathy, or you'll be able to have imagery, or you can actually, with your thoughts, you can see things that are going to happen.
Right.
And the only way you can do that actually is with specific practice of meditation. And that is a consecutive, you do this many hours a day, and it comes with discipline, and so that you actually reach that level of, I would say, super consciousness. Among those who understand brainwaves, this is among the highest brainwaves, which is gamma. Only a few people reach that when you actually meditate for many thousands of hours. Usually it's around up 10,000 hours of meditation. You can reach that. Or there is also applications when you can listen gamma brain waves, and these are the brain waves that gives you that big understanding, that wisdom, and the clarity, which I think at the moment is really missing, because that's something we learn, or we get taught at university or Ivy Leagues. Yeah.
That's obviously I need to practice that. I would love to, so I'm gonna check into that. I've been following your social media and some of your publications. This code has been stuck with me for so many months right now. Actually, when nothing is sure, everything is possible. And when I'm in this situation and I get some anxiety, I start reminding myself that okay, lots of things is uncertain, but there is a lot of opportunities. I'm trying to figure out my opportunities in this mess. But do you think there is a hope? Soon everything gonna go back to normal? Is it ever go back to
Okay. Okay. I think we probably need to redefine what normal is. All right. I think we will not experience a normality we have seen last January or December. Unlikely, because in a way we have accepted it. We have accepted it, that we are in a way ended up. If we would have, if we would have acted faster, and be more clear, more conscious. I think again, I only can mention that we as human beings, we adapting, and that's the way we survive. So each and everyone will find ways to adapt that we actually can survive and give meaning to our lives, and it might be very different. It's very possible that we look at life very differently, and I hope that everybody looks and finds meaning, because that's the ultimate fulfillment, where you feel safe and secure, and it gives you reason to keep enjoying life. Because if you keep going back what we had and how things were, I think it's going to be difficult. And the same thing is for business. If business is going to go back and say, what is the kind of profit margin we had, the growth, the market position, the market share, I think it's going to be rather difficult. And I'm sure many CEOs will, at the moment, will push and tweak their strategies, and that they get back, because their investors and stakeholders want exactly the same results they had last year. So this is going to be difficult. Some will be the big winners, but I can see a lot of losers, because people still stick to the old school, and that I don't see it happening.
the mindset has to change.
Yeah, and the mindset is something that has a lot to do with our consciousness, not about what we've been taught and what is knowledge and information, and comes from science and technology. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think science and technology is fascinating, but it cannot solve and make us understand everything. And we have, unfortunately, more and more people among us who want us to convince that's the ultimate thing, that's the only thing, and nothing else. Because we, in a way, are escaping from being confronted with the unknown and the unexpected. That's something that's always going to happen. We have to understand that nothing is for good. And as long as we don't understand that, I think we're going to keep hurting ourselves. And I think many people as well.
Yeah. One of the statements that I read about you, one of the articles, you mentioned people must wake up and understand that this pandemic is the instrument of a larger plan. Can you a little bit explain what you mean by larger plan?
Oi. Okay. When I look back, I think this goes back probably to the Second World War. We are in a situation where we see a lot of dominance, and more people being integrated in a circle of dominance and authority. And whoever does not comply to it is either being under attack or is being completely excluded economically or politically. I strongly believe that this virus has been created in order to create chaos and see how global society actually reacts. And I think we did very badly. So I would not be surprised if we're going to have different tsunamis over the next couple of years, how that one can actually gain more influence and more dominance and more control. And this is an interesting way of saying it. Those who control are the ones who have been controlled, who actually feel very fearful and worry. So, in order to have a safe and more stable world, we need to make sure those who are very fearful and have a lot of authority and a lot of impact on us need to feel safer and can deal better with fear. And that's a very difficult thing because we we clinch too much on tangibles, and that's going to be a big challenge. If I look in the future, culturally and socially, economically, I think it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be difficult, but it's going to be different. Yeah.
You consult with top companies in the world right now, with from their CEOs and top executives. Also, you have other projects as well uh, with your neuroanthropology. You deal with you research indigenous people and their brave way. How do you think these two are combined? There is a similarity in them.
Well, at the moment, I think whether you see or someone in indigenous, everybody wants to have a good life. We want to have a peaceful life. We want to have a habitat with a comfortable, safe, secure, we can enjoy. And that's not the case. I can certainly see and I feel that we can learn certain social behaviors from indigenous people and apply them to our day-to-day lives, that we can actually become more resilient, that we can become more generous, and actually that we look at value differently. Value is not only things that are on a spreadsheet, and that's the only language at the moment economists and Wall Street understands, and nothing else. We don't look value as, for example, people have a lot, very content. We don't look value at fresh water. We don't value look at fresh air or not pollution, good healthy soil. We don't look at that. Or people are kind, compassionate, generous. These are the kind of things indigenous people. Indigenous people don't go hunting and they put 25 antelopes on a tree and they wait until next week. No, that's what we do. People, they don't have, they don't go out hunting every day. We do that. We spend
You
in a
want
way.
more?
We kill our time to go shopping. We don't even need to go shopping. We kill our time to go shopping. We do a lot of nonsense because we lack of reality. We want to, in a way, hide something that, and rather follow and more concerned about our recognition and image and prestige rather than about ourselves and the ones among us, our loved ones, and those are important. And that's what indigenous people do. This closeness, this bonding, that's that connectiveness, and that's why I feel so safe and have a very high peacefulness. And they cannot allow to be stingy because otherwise they can't survive. So there is a certain level of generosity. And I think, sadly enough, we have to go in underdeveloped countries to see how people are generous because that's the only way they can survive. We somehow, industrialized world, we haven't really understood. There's a lot of people who are struggling at the moment. They struggled before, but no one would really come up with an idea and actually help them, support them. What kind of humanity is that really? What kind of leadership is that? What kind of culture are we trying to protect here? That sort of thing should us really make us think.
I'm really looking forward for the project of your indigenous people, and I would love to have another chat with you, another discussion about the project, because I really think we can learn a lot from indigenous people, how they think, how they operate in the world. If we're gonna leave this conversation and we want to remember you with one sentence, what is that?
I think it is. I like that everybody's really concerned what one can contribute, that we have a better, mindful tomorrow that contributes towards humanity.
Brilliant. Very nice, Christian.
Sure.
Thank you very much for your time.
Sure.
And you shared some amazing points. I need to go and digest them and rethink about them.
Sure. Sure. Thank you so much.
I
And
really enjoy reading your articles, and I'm looking forward one day to meet you when you have your speeches.
sure. Fantastic. Okay.
Thank you
Cool.
very much. Thank you very
Thanks.
much for my
Sure.
audience, and I
Bye.
will get back with another audience,
Sure. Okay.
another episode.
Bye
Ciao.
bye. Ciao. Bye bye.